It started as a hushed whisper among us students, a rumor that slithered through the halls like a shadow. The story of Mrs. Adissa, our dedicated science teacher who never took maternity leave, never missed a day, until the day she died. No one knew why she had refused to rest, not even when she was heavily pregnant. Some said she was waiting for someone. Others believed she had an irrational fear of being alone. But on that fateful day, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the science lab, I was there when it happened. One moment, she was speaking about the human circulatory system, and the next, a sharp gasp escaped her lips. Her hands clutched her stomach, and she crumpled to the floor. For a second, we all just stared. Then chaos erupted. Some students screamed, others ran for help, but by the time assistance arrived, it was too late. The miscarriage had been brutal, and the blood that pooled around her was more than just her own. The paramedics carried away her lifeless body, but the school, for reasons no one could explain, kept the fetus preserved in one of the science labs. The first time I heard about it moving was a year later. A senior student, studying late in the science block, had forgotten his notebook in the lab and went back to retrieve it. He told me later, his voice shaking, that as he stepped inside, the overhead lights flickered. That's when he noticed something, just a glimpse, at first, a dark red mass, glistening under the dim lights, dragging itself across the floor. Then came the sound, a faint whimper at first, then unmistakable. Mommy. The scream that tore from his throat was swallowed by the empty corridors as he stumbled back, knocking over a tray of beakers. He ran. He never spoke of it again, until much later, when others came forward with their own stories. It happened every year, on the anniversary of Mrs. Adissa's death. The science teachers always left early. The lab technicians locked the doors without explanation, but we knew. At exactly 10 p.m., a wail would rise from the empty labs, shrill and raw, a sound that burrowed into the bones of anyone who heard it. Those who were unfortunate enough to witness it never returned to the science block at night. Some claimed they could still hear it echoing in their heads, long after they had left. The dragging sound, the whisper, Mommy, but the story does not end there. One year, my friends and I decided we had had enough of the rumors. We wanted proof. So, on the night of the anniversary, we stayed behind. 5 of us, huddled in the dimly lit corridor just outside the science lab. Our phones clutched tightly, cameras recording. Nothing's going to happen, one of us whispered, though his voice wavered. Then, at precisely 10 p.m., the temperature in the corridor dropped. The air turned thick, suffocating, as though the very walls were holding their breath. A deep, unnatural silence fell over us, heavy and expectant. And then, a long, blood-curdling wail erupted from the lab, rattling through the doors, shaking the very floor beneath us. We froze, our eyes wide with terror. The sound was not just loud, it was inside us, clawing at our chests, squeezing our lungs. Then came the scraping, a slow, deliberate drag, like something wet and heavy pulling itself across the tiles. One of us, stunned, dared to step closer, phone light trembling in his hand. He peered through the glass window of the lab door, and there it was, a glistening red mass, quivering and raw, dragging itself forward. Its tiny, malformed limbs clawed at the ground, leaving behind dark smears. And then it lifted its head, or what should have been a head, 2 hollow, black pits where I should have been. And it spoke. Mommy. Tun's scream never made it past his lips. He stumbled backward, knocking over me and another friend, and in the chaos, we all turned and ran. Ran until our lungs burned, until the screaming in our ears faded, until we were safe beyond the school gates. The next day, none of us spoke about what we had seen. Not to each other, not to anyone, but the story spread. And now, every anniversary, the science block remains eerily empty, the labs locked tight, the teachers gone before the sun sets. No one dares to stay, because if they do, they might hear it too. The whisper, the scraping, the cry for a mother that will never come back. I still remember the layout of my old primary school vividly. The parade square stood at its heart, a vast, open space surrounded by the main school block to the west, the towering school hall to the north, and the sprawling field stretching to the east. To the south, the public road served as a gateway, ushering in students, teachers, and parents every morning. It had been a place of routine, a mundane part of everyday life, until the accident. It happened when I was in grade 6. A girl from my year, Mei Ling, had been playing in the parade square one evening, long after most students had gone home. A school bus, leaving in a hurry, failed to notice her small frame darting across the pavement. It wasn't until the sickening thud echoed across the nearly empty schoolyard that anyone realized what had happened. I wasn't there when it happened, but I saw the aftermath. The school cleaners struggled for 2 days to scrub away the deep crimson stains from the pavement, but the ghost of that tragedy lingered far longer. The mood at school grew somber. Assemblies were hushed, celebrations muted. Each evening, bright orange cones were placed around the square, marking the invisible boundaries that separated safety from danger. Then came the complaints. It started with a single phone call. The principal addressed us one morning, recounting a concerned parent's report. The caller claimed that they had seen a child skipping across the parade square late in the evening. A little girl, moving quickly, too quickly. The driver had swerved just in time to avoid hitting her, but when they turned back to scold her, the square was empty. No child, no footprints, nothing. The school responded with increased vigilance. Teachers took turns monitoring the square, watching over us like hawks. PE classes were banned from using the space, and students were ordered to queue inside the school hall before heading to their buses. But no matter how many restrictions were placed, the calls kept coming. Each report was eerily similar. Drivers, staff members, even late working parents claimed they saw a small girl dashing across the square, just at the edge of their vision. She was always skipping, her silhouette barely illuminated by the streetlights. But no one ever saw her clearly. By the time they tried to take a second look, she was gone. Rumors spread quickly among the students. Some said it was Mei Ling, still trying to catch her bus home. Others whispered that she didn't realize she had died, forever reliving the last moments before the accident. A few students, emboldened by curiosity, stayed behind to test the truth of these claims. One boy swore that, after dusk, if you stood at the edge of the parade square and listened closely, you could hear faint giggling, followed by the patter of unseen footsteps against the pavement. No one ever stayed long enough to find out if it was true. Years later, the school underwent a complete renovation. The old buildings were demolished, and a brand new campus rose in its place. On a nostalgic whim, I returned to visit and met some of my former teachers who had remained. One of them, a man who had always dismissed ghost stories, shared a detail that sent a chill through me. During the renovations, while tearing up the old, weathered tiles of the parade square, workers found something lodged beneath the pavement. A single, skeletal finger bone. The discovery left everyone stunned. How had it been missed for so long? Had it been there all along, hidden beneath the feet of thousands of students who never knew? The forensic reports, if there ever were any, never reached us. But the whispers grew. Some believed that the missing fragment of Mei Ling had finally been found, the last piece of her lost in the moment of impact. And with that discovery, the reports ceased. No more calls, no more complaints, no more skipping shadows in the dark. The school had been reborn, and at last she was at peace. The dorm had always felt different at night. During the day, it was alive with the usual chaos of college life. Slamming doors, laughter echoing down the halls, the distant thrum of music leaking through paper-thin walls. But when the sun dipped below the horizon and the world quieted, the building seemed to breathe in a different way. A heavier way. At first, I barely noticed it. I spent most nights in my boyfriend's dorm on the other side of campus, wrapped in the warmth of shared space, insulated from whatever unease lurked within my own room. But after our breakup in the spring semester, I had no choice but to return, to face the hollow space I had neglected for months. My roommate had already left, withdrawing from college unexpectedly. The room felt impossibly large without her presence, the emptiness pressing in on me. I told myself it was just an adjustment period, that I wasn't used to being alone. But as the weeks passed, the feeling of unease grew. At night, I felt watched. Not in the abstract, paranoia-induced way, but in the visceral, hair-raising way that made my breath hitch in my throat. I'd wake up in the early hours of the morning, my skin damp with sweat, convinced that something was in the room with me. The bed would creak beside me, as though an invisible weight had just lifted. Shadows flickered unnaturally against the walls, stretching and twisting in ways they shouldn't. Then came the sounds, a faint tapping from inside the walls, rhythmic and deliberate. The whisper of footsteps pacing the length of the room. The distinct, unmistakable sound of my desk chair scraping against the floor, though I never moved it. I started asking around. My dorm had been built decades ago, one of the oldest buildings on campus. Whispers of its history had long circulated among students, passed down like cautionary tales. A girl in the 1950s, they said, had taken her own life on the fourth floor, hanging herself in her dorm room. Another student, years later, had fallen, or was pushed down the elevator shaft, his body found crumpled in the darkness below. The hauntings, I had always assumed, were just stories, a way to make the mundane seem thrilling. But the more I heard, the less certain I became. One night, the air in my room turned frigid, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, unnatural for spring. I curled beneath my blankets, trying to ignore the way my breath misted in the dim glow of my bedside lamp. Then the mattress shifted. My entire body went rigid. It was slow, deliberate, as if something had just settled onto the bed beside me. The dip in the mattress was unmistakable, the sensation of weight pressing against my legs sending ice through my veins. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, only stare at the ceiling as my pulse roared in my ears. A whisper sliced through the silence. Not words, just the barest exhale of sound. Too close, too real. I bolted upright, flicking on every light in the room. The moment the bulb flooded the space, the weight vanished. The air warmed. The silence stretched on, deep and endless. I barely slept that night, or any night after. The moment the semester ended, I packed my bags and left without looking back. I moved into an off-campus apartment, eager to escape whatever had claimed that room as its own. I told myself it was all in my head, that I had let my imagination get the better of me. But sometimes, even now, I wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I can still feel the weight of something unseen pressing against my legs. Watching, waiting.